Can you say hard hats, folks? Hard hats, lunch pails, steel-toe boots?
Anything short of a championship this year is a failure. Look at this boomer right here.
You've just got so much talent here.
Somebody said we need to apologize for Jalen.
Can I close it, John? What are we apologizing for? What did we say? What did we do?
The Celtics complete two impressive back-to-back wins over the Charlotte Hornets. Tonight, 113-103. Nick Gelso here with A. Sherrod Blakely. What's up, man?
What's going on, Nick? What's going on? It's been a minute. What's going on?
It's been a while, bro. Good game tonight. Tough third quarter. Well, great first half. Let's start there. Tatum, Pritchard. I swore I wasn't going to talk about Luke Cornett tonight, but we're going to have to at some point. We'll hold that off till Bobby Manning and Noah get here from they're down in Charlotte. They're going to join us, and I'm sure Bobby will be talking about Luke quite a bit. So his 19 points can wait. But, you know, you look at that first half between Pritchard and Tatum, man. Pritchard, and, you know, he's the type of guy that will say it now, I'm going for sixth man of the year, and actually go through with making the real push to get sixth man of the year. 17 first half points.
No, he was good. I mean, he was really, really good, impactful. And, you know, it's interesting for those who didn't watch the game, and for those of us who did, you could see the way that him and Tatum were working in concert. They were really trying to get the ball out of Tatum's hands. And more often than not, Tatum made sure that it wound up in Pritchard's hand, and Pritchard made them pay. That's what you're going to have to do. When you have a player as good as Jason Tatum is, who draws the kind of attention that he does, you have to make defenses pay when they try to overplay, overprotect, double, tilt, shift in his direction. And Pritchard did a really, really good job of that. And definitely, you know, when you talk about six men in the year, and I know it's super early to get into the weeds with that, like super, super duper early, but it speaks to his mindset. Pritchard knows that for him, the best thing that he can do is be the best version of Peyton Pritchard he can be night in, night out. And if that's happening, he's going to be in that conversation. But I will tell you this, though. His stiffest competition, I mean, if as we get through the season, is probably a guy that he saw a lot of tonight and this weekend in Trey Mann, who is good. I mean, he can score the hell out of the ball. Wasn't as impactful in this game as we've seen him in the past. But for Peyton, you know, it's good to have games like this when you're on the floor against somebody who's obviously, you know, angling for the same thing you are. He wants to be the best six man in the league this year. And Peyton finishing with 22. I think Trey had like maybe 12, 14. What did Trey have? Trey had 10.
10 points,
He had even 10. So these are the kind of games that not only help the Celtics in terms of wins and losses, but also helps Peyton to, you know, move a little bit closer to achieving some of those personal individual goals that I know he's set out to do this year.
Joe Mazzulla is talking down in Charlotte now, and Noah Dalzell and Bobby Manning is down there for CLNS. They'll be checking in also with updates on Jaylen Brown. MRI, I think the second MRI on that hip, correct?
Yeah, I believe it was the second. And hips are you know, you can't play around with that. Play around with that. So good for them to be able to give him some rest and just reevaluate where he's at, and because they're going to need him obviously as the season progresses for sure.
No question. So Celtics postgame show on CLNS. We're powered by Prize Picks, Game Time, and tonight Rocket Money. We'll get more information on our partners a little later in the show. But as for tonight, the other game story was the Hornets coming out in the third quarter and outscoring Boston, I think 24-17, somewhere in that range. You saw that's where they made their push, Charlotte, and the Celtics, they struggled in that quarter. But really good to see Joe Mazzulla hold Tatum, right, in between that third and fourth quarter, hold Tatum out later, put him back, and the Celtics came back in that fourth quarter, held the lead. Tatum came back with Kata, and it was history from there. It was like gangbusters in that fourth quarter. And, man, this team, if you had any concerns about confidence or swagger or even for a championship team, chip on your shoulder, don't be worried early in this season because you're seeing it already. Tonight, I never really really had any concern whatsoever. And when I probably felt that the most in the past, Sherrod, was like 2009 when the Celtics were defending their title then.
Mhm.
So there's definitely and tonight I got to take the opportunity to say the world champion Boston Celtics. They are the world champions. This is the first time I have a chance to say it on the show. So 7 games in, I'm already pumping my tires and gloating a little bit. But first opportunity there. And yeah, so anyway, Drew was big in that third quarter as well, Sherrod. So he's still continuing to prove, and D. White too. I mean, everybody really chipped in tonight.
Yeah. You mentioned Drew Holiday. I thought, he had a couple of really big plays. One that jumps out to me was when him and Al Horford played the 2-man game where he just fed the ball to Al on a block. Al just dribble, suck the defense, and at some point kick it out to Drew, 3-pointer. And from there, the Celtics really seem to just kind of continue to roll ahead to this really, a good win. Because this Charlotte team, they got some good players. They're not great players. They're young, they're talented, they're hungry. They play with very little fear of the Boston Celtics, and they've got a heck of a coach in Charles Lee, someone that Celtics fans are familiar with. Charles Lee's a guy that was on the staff of the Boston Celtics last year, won a championship, was on the Milwaukee Bucks staff when they won a championship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like this guy is not familiar with being around teams that are building towards a championship. Now, in Charlotte, they got a long ways to go before that conversation can even be alluded to. But he definitely has those guys playing hard. And this was, I thought, a good test for the Celtics. One of the things that we've seen historically is that playing a team back-to-back nights in their building, it's hard to win both of those games. It really is, no matter how talented you may be over the opponent. And the Celtics, I thought, did a good job of playing with the kind of poise, the kind of composure that you have to have when you're in a situation like this. And it was a game where I thought Joe Mazzulla did a lot of really good things.
Yes.
I thought
timeout.
Yeah. He did a great job of pushing the right buttons at the right time to get the right results. And we talk a lot about this team and their overall growth and how, certain players have to get better and others have to maintain a certain level of excellence. Joe Mazzulla is getting better as a coach.
Yeah.
You watch the way that they have handled themselves the start of the season. There is a clear and undeniable vision of how he is figuring out how to do things better, more effective, more efficient, and really he's giving these guys a chance to win every single night. And if we're being honest and candid, there's a hell of a lot of coaches who don't do that. There's a hell of a lot of coaches that have a really crappy game plan and they can't quite figure out why it's not working. And when those of us who are watching are like, well, because it was a bad game plan. Joe's not having those kind of nights. And again, he has a team that has talent and he's getting better as a coach. And when you put those two together, you're going to have a team that's giving itself the greatest chance possible to be the last team standing. And that's ultimately what this season is about. It's about being the last team standing when the final horn of the season sounds. They did it a year ago, and they look very much like they are ready to run it back.
The other Joe Mazzulla thing is, and this is, people might be surprised to hear me say this, but I'm now looking for them to shoot a lot of threes, Sherrod. And I mean, I am. And in the past, I was always, and I'm still, I don't like when they get wild and it's just 3-point heavy. But like, I'm finding myself in certain games saying, that's an open three, take it. Or that's whereas in the past, I wouldn't just get frustrated. I would get annoyed with the Mazzulla volume of three kind of strategy. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it, but I think it's working.
Oh, it's like any type of system. I mean, if you're doing it and you're doing it the way you ideally envision it being done and you're winning, yep, this is the right system for you.
Yeah, see me in February when they're not dropping, right?
Yeah. I don't think his system works for everyone. I don't think it works for most teams, to be honest with you, because in order for you to be able to get the kind of threes that they get up on a regular basis, you've got to have multiple guys who can create their own shot, because those guys are the ones that create open threes. Tatum can create his own shot. Jaylen Brown, Derek White. You go to the bench, Peyton Pritchard. And now even Sam Hauser is causing some problems when he gives you the pump fake, two dribble step in long two. That now all of a sudden forces defense to do things a little bit differently as well. Drew Holiday, another one. You go down the line, they become very difficult to defend because they have so many guys that can get to the rim, and those guys they're knowledgeable and smart enough and savvy enough to know that if the defense takes away that dribble penetration, that means the defense is sucked in some capacity, which means you can spray the ball to a wide open 3-point shooter or a lightly contested one. And the Celtics are doing that at a very high clip. And it's looking more and more like just the right basketball play. I think, last year, I thought they forced a lot of threes that they just didn't need to.
Yeah.
I thought it was a more conscious thing that we got to get up lots of threes. We got to get up lots of threes. Now it's just part of what they do because it's really more times than not, it's the right basketball play. If you dribble drive and the defense collapses and takes away your ability to get all the way to the rim, the smart play is to kick it open to one of the teammates. Because if there's multiple defenders in a paint that are forcing you to take a tough contested shot, that means somebody's open. Your job at that point is to get them the ball. And the Celtics have done that at a really high clip to start the season. And I think it's going to continue. They're becoming a very difficult team to match up with because they have so many guys that can create their own shot. And if you are looking around the NBA, there are not a teams that have 3, 4, 5 different shot creators. Most teams have 1 or 2, maybe 3 on a good day. The Celtics have at least 4, and that's one of the
5.
And that's one of the things that I think people really don't give them enough credit for. They talk about them taking lots of threes and having good 3-point shooters, but you got to have creators to get those 3-point shots, and they do a really good job. And you got to give Brad Stevens his props. He has created a team of multiple guys that can get their own shots, and that's creating shots for everyone else.
And they have the trust and the confidence in their teammates not to force those shots.
Right.
So the unselfishness, somebody had said in the chat room, somebody had said in the third quarter, they started playing more ISO ball. And that's true. And it's indicative of it kind of, when they're playing a lot of ISO ball because the ball's obviously not moving, but usually it's coinciding with, a fall off in productivity or lead. So
guys trying to get it back.
This team is just made to move the ball. Like some other great teams we've seen throughout history that have high assist turnouts or ratios are usually, this team fits right in that mold. They do.
And the key, Nick, that you just pointed out was just being unselfish. These guys, they figured out that, if I give the ball up when I'm supposed to, chances are I'm going to get it back when I need it, when this team needs me to get a bucket. And that's one of the benefits of having, won a championship. Doc Rivers, talked about this the other night when the Bucks were in town about how, these guys have kind of figured it out, how to win, and they're not going away anytime soon. Brad Stevens took care of that with some of the contracts that they doled out. The players are saying all the right things, doing all the right things right now. And, the balancing act that they have is that you're trying to build towards winning a championship while at the same time developing the back end of your roster, which is a lot easier said than done. But you start to see guys like Jordan Walsh get in before, the game is over. You're seeing, Peyton Pritchard having a little bit more prominent role. Sam Hauser, he's been out with injuries, but he's starting to get back into the flow. Keita, who we'll talk a little bit more about. He's starting to show why a lot of folks are excited about him. And obviously, the Bobby Manning portion of the program, a.k.a. Luke Cornett Hour, we'll get into that a little bit later. But
let's focus on Keita a bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, if you're a Celtics fan, that you should be excited about for what this team is doing now and what they have the potential to do down the road.
Yep. And part of that is the confidence and the swagger you're seeing them walk in with night in and night out. They are the world champions. They look like the world champions. And I think now we've passed the point of saying, well, when adversity hits, are they going to be able to turn it around? Because they've already done it time and time again now, not just this season, but last season on their way to banner 18. And I think really, barring injury, Sherrod, because we know what happened in 2009, I still have PTSD. Barring any major, although, and I don't want to jinx or put off or underplay injuries. But this team's resiliency too, already 7-8 games in, we've seen them win and compete without Horford, without Jalen, and of course without KP. So, without talking too much about injuries and the possibility, but keeping them away from Jalen and Jason, other than that, I think the team can withstand an injury that puts someone out. Obviously, we don't want it, but they're showing that they're deep, man. What Brad has built is so deep.
Yeah, and I think, Porzingis' injury has really helped this team figure out how to handle adversity. Because how many teams have a 7'2" unicorn who can shoot threes, score in a block, contest shots at the rim, and not have them around for significant portions of your postseason run and still dominate? Like 16-3 in the postseason dominate. And when he did play, he played great, which you expect. But the way that this team is built is they're not reliant on one or two guys to carry them night in, night out. Because we're going to talk a lot about Jason Tatum, obviously. We're going to talk a lot about Jaylen Brown. But you look at a guy like Derek White has arguably been their most consistent player thus far this season. You look at a guy like Drew Holiday. He doesn't put up major numbers, but when you look at the games when things get dicey, Drew Holiday becomes the best player on the floor.
Easy, hands down.
And to have guys that have that particular skill, and Peyton Pritchard, I mean, if it's a close game and we're near the end of the quarter, there's no one I want the ball in their hands more than Peyton Pritchard. He's shown the ability to deliver that late end of the shot clock, end of the quarter dagger at a level
and
that
wants to do it. Gerard. He wants the ball in that moment.
And his teammates want to get him the ball. It's to the point now where teams are putting specific game plans together so that he does not get the ball at the end of quarters, which is unusual, to say the least. But my point is this team is built in a way where you cannot lock in on limiting or trying to minimize one or two guys because they put you in this whack-a-mole mode where the minute you think you just got one or two guys locked up, there comes Peyton Pritchard. The minute you address him, Sam Hauser is hitting shots.
Imagine how demoralizing.
Yeah.
Rod, how demoralizing is that for opponents, right? Make them dig into their bench, and you're digging in for Al Horford, when KP's back. You're digging in for Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard. Yeah. I mean it's like never-ending waves of talent keep coming at you.
You got guys like Luke Cornett, who's basically your eighth, ninth man, who, when you throw him in the starting lineup, is getting you 19 points. You got guys like Keita, who's at the end of your bench, and he's doing chin-ups on everyone in your front court and blocking shots and altering shots. So they have built this team into without question, a team that's built for the long haul and impactful now. It's just a matter of keeping it all together, staying healthy, and just basically playing close. They don't even have to play at their absolute peak. They just have to play close to their potential because doing that alone is going to get them at worst to the conference finals.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty incredible. There's a lot of KP criticism going on in the chat room, Sherrod, that I'm watching. And I think fans, what they're underestimating is how much, and I think you could speak to this because you've covered so many locker rooms, how much, yes, he's been a big difference on the court. He changes their style of play for the positive, but he's had a lot of injuries. Right. But he's still been such a great influence on this team based on locker room influence, attitude. I mean, dude's always smiling. There's no place he'd want to be other than here. And when he is on the court, the Celtics are marginally better. So talk because they're going off on him in the chat room a little bit. He's been air quote useless because he's been off the court so much. But I think that KP has contributed even from a non-playing perspective, and you've seen that over and over the years. Yeah.
I mean, well, first and foremost, you have to identify what is the goal. What are you trying to achieve as a team? And last season, it was to win a championship. Last I checked, when you got to the playoffs, you had a lot of success. But when he came back, he put you over the top. He gave you that absolute, extra little sauce or whatever you want to call it, juice, whatever you want to call it, that made that series a non-series. And to have a guy like that is vital to winning a championship. And when we look at Jaylen Brown, I don't know if there's another guy on this team who seems to have unlocked the awesomeness of Jaylen
Yep.
Brown. I mean, Jaylen Brown is a very different player, a much better player, a more complete player since Porzingis has been part of this roster. And I don't think it's a coincidence that those two get along so well. I don't think it's a coincidence that Jalen's face lights up when you ask him about KP and vice versa. And when you have one of your best players in a position or predicament where they feel really good in a way that we haven't seen them visibly feel good about before, there's nothing but positive that can come about with that. And let's just cut to the chase. He's 7'2", can shoot threes and all the shots. He's a really good player when he's healthy. And the way one of the things that I think a lot of people don't want to embrace is that while yes, you are so much better when you have him around, his absence has allowed someone like Luke Cornett to expand his game. Yeah. His absence has allowed someone like, Kata to be more than just like this idea, this concept that's really good, but we don't really know how that looks in a real game. Well, yeah, we do. We're finding out that Kata can do more than just be a concept that you like to think about. He can actually play. Now, is he flawed? Absolutely. Is Luke Cornett flawed? Absolutely. But they're getting a chance to work out those flaws. You're getting a chance to see what they can do, and your team is still finding ways to win games. So as much as I and most people would love to see Porzingis out there, his absence is going to benefit this team long-term, because when he comes back, he's going to be hungrier to get back to playing at the level that he knows he's capable of. The guys that were filling in for him are going to have reps and develop muscle memory on how to be an impact player, how to help this team, so that when they are called upon for 3, 4, 5 minute stints here and there, if maybe there's foul trouble or something to that effect.
Yeah, this is all going to play into that.
Yeah, they're not going to be in all the moment.
Panic.
They know what it's like to be out there. So to me, when you are in a situation that the Celtics are, which I think most games, they're playing with house money.
Yep.
Getting a chance to get a better look at Kata in real game situations, getting a chance to look at Lou, getting a chance to play Xavier Tillman, all of that is going to be to your benefit over the long haul. Because remember, as much as we want to embrace what they're doing now, this is about April, May, and June. Well, what's happening in November and October and December is all about building towards April, May, and June, and getting those guys reps, getting those guys on the floor in games, and them contributing to winning in those games. That's going to help you in April, May, and June. And that's why, to me, again, I'm not tripping out about Porzingis not being around, because I know that this is something that if you're a Celtics, this is going to be to your benefit over the long haul.
And I love it right now. I mean, this is great.
And it forces opponents, Nick, to have to expand their game planning for you. Because now all of a sudden, when Kata's in the game, if Porzingis was playing and Kata would be on your Sky report, but there might be maybe 5 words about him. Now you actually have to devote some attention to thinking about what are we going to do when he gets in the game. Same thing with Luke. Luke is doing more than just screening now. He's actually looking to be more of an offensive threat. So now all of a sudden that has to be added to your game plan. Xavier Tillman, undersized 4, can shoot a little bit, but now he's shooting a little bit more. That has to be part of your game plan. So now all of a sudden, that means you have to work a little bit harder to prepare for the Celtics. And we ain't even talking about the bread and butter, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Derek White, Al Horford, et cetera, et cetera. So long story short, the Porzingis' absence is making it extremely more difficult for teams to game plan against the Celtics, and conversely, making it easier for the Celtics to develop talent and win games. Because when you're a championship team, it's more like rinse, recycle, repeat. You've got the same 6, 7, 8 guys you play every night, and that's how that works. The Celtics can't do that because of injuries and because of load management. And so they've got to, guys that maybe on most nights are the 10th, 11th man might be starting one night. Guys who are, who might not even be in an active roster might actually be in the rotation. That's how you develop your players and still have this goal in mind of winning a championship. The Celtics, to me, this is the blueprint for how, if you want to win a championship and stay in the conversation, the Celtics are giving you a blueprint on how that looks.
Add to that, giving confidence to guys like Jordan Walsh with 13 minutes, no, he didn't score. But I think it's even more impressive that Brad left him in the game. And a lot of that was third quarter minutes when they were struggling, not putting it on him. But I said Brad, Joe has confidence, and I think we've complained a little about Joe going to the young guys. So he's really making an effort, clearly, this young season to get Jordan Walsh minutes, even in tense parts of the games, and that speaks to what you're talking about, and is going to go a long way come January, February, March, April, when you've got to call on these guys to make those 13. If they're going to play 13 minutes, they've got to make them impactful, or at least, be a placeholder and not hurt you.
Yeah. I mean,
we're seeing that.
Yeah. There's a tendency to think that, guys who can run fast, jump high, and shoot, they're going to find their way. They're going to be good players. But so much of the NBA is a mental battle than it is physical, because there's very little difference from a physical standpoint between most players in the NBA. They're all exceptional athletes. They all have, certain things that they can do at just, a superhuman level. But mentally, are they tough enough to deal with adversity when the shot clock is winding down? Are they going to run away from the ball when they've got fans who are screaming and saying some really not so nice things to them? Are they going to allow that stuff to mentally alter them? When people are screaming the minute they catch the ball and are about to shoot, does that throw them off? These are the kind of things that, unless you get into the game and understand literally what that's like, you're not going to be able to handle that as well as you could if you're called upon in the playoffs. If someone twists an ankle or is in foul trouble and you've got to play more minutes than normal, are you built to do that? Are you mentally built to do that? Physically, I don't worry about guys in the NBA that much when it comes to being physically ready to do things. Are they mentally strong enough to hold their own and make plays and do that kind of stuff? And Jordan Walsh, I love the fact that he's getting opportunities to develop that. He's getting opportunities to showcase where he's at as far as his learning curve of what NBA basketball is like. And I would say at this point, it's been up and down. I think he's had some moments where he looked really good and other moments where you're reminded that he's still a relatively young player who left college as a relatively young player. And that's fine, because you're not counting on him to be a ready-made product right now. You're looking to develop him. And these are opportunities early in the season where you get to do that, where even if, let's say, he's out there for 5 or 6 minutes and he doesn't play particularly well, and maybe you wind up losing that game, it's better to have him go through that experience in October and November than to go through it in April, when it becomes so much more impactful, so much more of a season-defining, difference-making type of thing. And you don't want that. You want him to be as mentally strong as possible when the games absolutely matter most, and that's in the playoffs. But in order to make that happen, in order to get them ready, he's got to get some burn now, and that's what Joe Mazzulla is doing a really good job of. To be candid with you, I've been surprised that he has leaned on guys like Jordan as much as he has, and Kata as well.
It seems to be almost intentional, right?
Yeah.
It seems like he's making a real effort to do it. You think that's speaking exactly to what you're talking about? Readiness for late into the season.
I think Joe understands that the way they won a championship last year is not going to be the road that they are going to take again. They would love if things played out that way, but I think Joe is thinking, what are some things that we can do to make us even more insulated against stuff going wrong, things that happen that we can't control? So what can I do as a coach to do a better job than I did last year? What's an area that I need to grow in? And I thought one of the areas he needed to grow in was trusting the young guys, giving them opportunities to develop and grow, make mistakes, and learn from them. And we're seeing that with Jordan. We're seeing that with Jordan on a way that I am pleasantly surprised.
I'm surprised.
Because we saw glimpses of Jordan showing some good things in the summer. And I thought some good things in the preseason. But it's summer league. It's preseason. Those games don't really matter. And there's a different level of talent that you're dealing with. But now you're seeing what he's able to do in real live games. And again, I think he's had some really good moments so far. I think he's had some where he's definitely going to learn and needs to learn to get better and handle those situations better. But that's the beauty of being a young player on a championship caliber team. If you're doing your job as a young fella, you're going to be picking up things that are going to benefit you down the road and trying to implement them in games. And once you implement them in games, it may not be as smooth as when Jason Tatum does them, but you still need to learn those lessons. He missed a couple of shots tonight that he knows he has to be comfortable making. I mean, that corner three has to be a 40, 45, 50% area of knocking down for him to really help the Celtics, because he's going to get that shot pretty much every night that he steps on the floor. And he's got to knock it down at a high enough clip where teams are going to have to respect it. And once that happens, all of a sudden, the game planning against the Celtics, it continues to expand. And he continues to expand his opportunities to get playing time. So there's just a lot of really good things going on with this team now. And I love the fact that Joe Mazzulla is not resting on those good things. He's thinking, but what if things don't go good? What if some things happen that I can't control, but I have to deal with and address? What can I do to better prepare this team for the rough times, for the storms, for the tsunamis of the season that we got to find a way to fight through? Am I going to have a team of soldiers and battlers who are built to handle those moments? And Joe, I think, is doing a really good job of building up the confidence of guys like Luke, guys like Jordan Walsh, Tillman, Keita. Those guys have a different level of confidence now than they had a year ago, when they pretty much knew, unless the Celtics were up by 40 in the fourth, they may not play. But now you see situations with Jordan Walsh, they're looking at maybe a 6-7 point lead, and Jordan's getting there. He's the first or second guy getting in the damn game. That's something that, again, it's a major confidence boost.
And not getting yanked fast.
Right. Not getting
that says as much as getting in. You look at a stat line like tonight. It wasn't horrendous. It was just all donuts, right? He had a steal, and yet he stayed in there for 13 minutes. And obviously, if this were later in the season, Joe probably would have maybe yanked him a bit earlier. But the fact that he didn't just continues to speak to our point, which is he's clearly putting an emphasis on playing the young guys. Now, how much of that is Maine playing yet? Does that have something to do with this? Like, did Maine start playing yet?
Maybe I know that this season is going to start very soon. So
So you think he'll go down then, or no?
I don't. I think that if he goes down, he won't. I think they're going to do a little bit more splitting with him, where I think they like having him around these guys because he's starting to show that he can help. And that's ultimately what this is about. And with Sam Hauser's, injuries, I mean, he's back to playing, but you never know with backs where they can potentially flare up again and be problematic. And it's good to have a guy like Jordan Walsh, who's obviously a different kind of player than Sam, but nonetheless a guy that is starting to feel more confident that he can help the team when he's on the floor. And that's a big part of this, playing in the NBA, is actually believing that you can play in the NBA. And Jordan, I think, his confidence has to be on the rise with just the way the opportunities that he's getting. And you look tonight, Joe played 5 guys off the bench, and 4 out of those 5 guys had a positive plus minus when they were on the floor. And the only one that didn't have a positive was Tillman, and Tillman was just -1. So those guys bench, primarily the guys on the bench are the young guys. They're getting in the game, and literally positive things are happening for this team when they're on the floor. And that's what you want. For Joe, it validates your reasoning for playing them. For those players, it gives them confidence that they can help this team win. And for the vets like Tatum and Brown, it's great to know that the guys who don't normally play, the guys that you pretty much only see in practice on the court, are actually able to help you in games that matter, in actual, real life game situations. So there's just a lot of really good things going on right now with the Celtics, and Joe's doing a good job of making sure that keeps going, and that he's developing young guys along the way.
Well, and to speak to depth, I mean, you in development, and you look 113-103, 10-point win, second win in 2 nights against the Charlotte Hornets, and no Kristaps Porzingis, no Jaylen Brown, and Al Horford. I mean, he was active with 6 rebounds, 5 assists, but 0 points. So you're really leaning on, and obviously Joe played the double big lineup with Luke and Al. Luke was, and speaking of Luke, Bobby Manning is preparing right now to get hop in with us. But
look at that smile, Nick.
Is he on? Oh, there he is. Oh, Luke. So perfect timing, Bobby Manning, coming to us live from Charlotte with the biggest smile, ear to ear smile on his face. Luke Cornett, 19 points, man, continues to play well. Go ahead. The floor is yours, Bobby.
Yeah.
The Bobby Manning hour has begun.
Score one for.
Oh, I didn't want to go
Luke
on me
versus
here. Hold
Kata
on a minute.
conversation. Hold on, we're
There we
doing
go.
Cornet Cam. Do we still have the
Cornett Cam?
There we go. Big bounce. Luke is in the scoring department now. I knew he was going to be able to score pretty easy this one because I don't think the Hornets had any player over 6'9". But credit to him for finishing consistently in there, getting on the offensive glass, just being active and running some really good sets. You know, when the Hornets were pushing close in that third quarter, I thought he and White ran a nice set to set him up for a wide open dunk there. I think it was the second to last basket. So stellar stuff from him here, Sherrod. I think this is about as complete a game as we've seen from Luke. He played strong, played good in the limited opportunities he got, and I feel like he impacted the game in a bunch of areas.
Yeah, I mean, this was absolutely. Let's put it this way: if Luke Cornett is putting together the Luke Cornett highlight reel from this season, this better be one of those games that is prominently listed and shown. Luke did a lot of good things. The one thing about Luke, Bobby, that is, for me personally, it's been my biggest frustration with him is that this guy came to the Celtics with the reputation of being a stretch big, and we don't see him extending the floor in any way, shape, or form. So if he's had to transform his game to do some other things, what are some of those other things other than setting screens? And I thought this was one of those great games where Luke and the Celtics recognized that he had a mismatch, and they exploited that mismatch. This is not the first time that they've played a team that did not have much size in the front court. Yet this is one of the few games where it seemed like there was almost a conscious / intentional effort to get Luke the ball around the rim so that he could do some good things. And to me, that's what this is about. The issue isn't whether Luke can play. It's whether Luke is going to be in position to be impactful. And this, again, when you're playing Charlotte on a Saturday night back-to-back, Luke damn well better be impactful because he should be impactful against a team like this. Hey, Noah.
I see nothing's changed.
Exactly.
Good to see you guys.
Look, you see,
All
Bobby,
right,
you know what we're talking about before you even a word is said.
Well, I just watched the game with Bobby, so I already know this is a special night for him.
Exactly. It's the
for
Luke Cornett portion
Cornett.
of the program.
Cornet versus Kate around, what are we, 3 or 4 into it at this point?
No, you
tell you
can't
what,
make
Bobby.
it you're missing the plot. You can't do it a versus.
You can't.
Yeah, and I thought Kata was solid tonight, especially into the second half. You're glad you have both for situations like these. And I like that they started Luke and went double big there. I thought that was a good response, Noah, to Jalen being out in this one because you let Kata get some free reign off the bench. You saw like 3 minutes of Tillman, so they gave him a shot, a small one, but a shot nonetheless. And you're able to limit Al's responsibilities in this one, even though I thought Al had a really good defensive game and looked fresh at times coming off the back-to-back rest there. So didn't hit his shots, but overall a +4. So effective minutes from him. And the Hornets pushed him. I knew these games were going to be hard, Noah. You have Trey Mann going at you. Ball went crazy after the 0-for-5 start. And while they didn't have the big men involved in this game, you still have Brandon Miller to contend with in this game coming back, who I thought hurt them at different times. So good test here that I felt like the Celtics handled well stylistically.
Yeah, and I understand you know, Bobby was very excited about the Hornets. I understand it more now, even though obviously the Celtics won both games and, you know, neither went all the way down to the wire, but there's a lot of talent over there. They're a fun team to watch. There's fun individual players, but you can see how it's just they're not there right now. Like it's the beginning of something. But there was a lot of different – I think this game had different elements that were interesting, like, you know, Tatum. And I feel like whenever he plays one of his former coaches, they overdo it a little bit more on him. And I felt like today he actually didn't overreact. He didn't, you know, he took probably too many threes, but Joe was happy with kind of the playmaking and just the decision making. And I thought that in general, like he played like under control. He wasn't doing too much. And you kind of know with the Charles Lee, Ime, like Will Hardy, like all those games have a certain feel to them. And I feel like the Hornets games are going to now fall in that category too.
Yeah, and there's the other dynamic, the Tatum comment about, is playing Charlotte on Tuesdays from about a year ago, there's that. But the thing that I really liked about Tatum is no, as you pointed out, not only did he play, I think, with a little bit more poise when Charlotte tried to really, blitz him and things like that, but he made the right basketball play almost every time. And that was get the ball to Peyton. Let Peyton Pritchard has become, that option. If you are going to blitz Tatum, if you're Joe Mazzulla, make sure you got Peyton Pritchard on the floor, because Peyton is the one guy that teams are not going to give the kind of Jaylen Brown respect to, but he's going to force them to do some things that they don't want to do. Like you have to defend Peyton Pritchard differently. And Peyton showed, I thought, in this game where if you play him a little bit too tight around the 3-point line, he can put it on the floor and finish at the rim, particularly when you're playing a team that doesn't have a legitimate shot blocking presence. Peyton, it seemed like this game, a little bit more than most, went to the rim, and that was just a smart basketball play, because if there's no rim protection, then what the hell are you shooting long threes for when you can get, an easier contested or lightly contested layup? Same thing with Luke, same thing with Keita. And the one thing, Nick and I talked about this earlier. I'm just curious your thoughts on this. This team, we all know they're built to win a championship. That's the focus. But they also recognize there's a need to develop young players. How do you think Joe Mazzulla has been doing in that regard? And I'm thinking specifically about Jordan Walsh, who, by all accounts, he doesn't necessarily figure prominently in the rotation, and yet we're seeing him play, rotation-esque minutes early on in the season.
Well, this is my favorite topic of conversation, so I'm happy to talk about it. I think Jordan is an example of a guy who last year I would never have guessed that he'd be playing, 9-10 minutes a game. And it's early, and Sam Hauser's limited with the injury and everything, but he's earned Mazzulla's trust. And I asked Mazzulla about it yesterday, and he said, if they're on the floor, I trust them. And I think we know that because there's been plenty of times where we've wanted to see guys on the floor, and like Mazzulla is not playing them because he's not going to just play young guys just for the sake of resting his starters. Like, he's going to play guys that he trusts and that he feels like won't make mistakes. And Jordan today, he played 13 minutes. I don't think he made a shot. He was 0 for 2. Yesterday he was 2 for 3 from 3. So the 3-point shot, too small of a sample to really understand like what the situation is going to be. But I think just defensively, he just brings energy. He's understanding the system. He's not making many mistakes. He had a couple of good plays where he just got a loose ball or just was in the right place at the right time. And his job is to just not stand out. Like, if you don't notice that he's out there for 3 minutes, I think that's a win. Like, you don't need him to do anything spectacular. You just want him to see him blending in there. And I sat with him at shoot around yesterday for a while, and he was kind of talking about how he's been studying Drew Holiday film. Like, that's been the big thing that he's been focused on. He's constantly looking at how Drew Holiday is tailoring his defensive game for every single opponent that he plays, and like watching the way that Drew Holiday then guards those players based off of what he's been studying. So like, that's been a big focus for him. And he said himself, like, he didn't think he was going to be here right now. Like, that was not, you had to guess he would not be in Boston playing rotational minutes in November after I think the year he had last year in summer league. But that he's going to do everything he can to like stay in that spot. So it's a good sign. It's a good sign of trust, and it's a good sign of what's to come for him, because again, he's just 20 years old still, and he has very limited NBA experience.
Yeah, I mean, he's a young guy in the NBA who came into the league as a young guy after a very, very, very short period of time in college. So yeah, he's definitely got a lot of room to grow. Bobby, what do you think, Bobby?
What is that?
I'm trying to see what the emergency is here. Yeah, I'm glad that they're investing, playing, and sticking with their young guys through some bigger roles here and struggles. The last 2 games with Keita specifically, I feel like the starts to those games weren't great, but they rolled with him, let him find some rhythm, and you're starting to see some real steps with him. Joe talked a little bit before the game about just his overall activity, ability to stay with guys on the perimeter. There was a moment he got switched on the ball tonight where Ball just ended up whipping the ball out of bounds. I don't know if it was anything Keita did, but I just keep seeing more and more of those situations where Keita rather, is out on the perimeter defending, and this is too much. And able to hold his own. And in the case of Walsh, the shots from three still aren't falling consistently, right? And that's probably going to have to be his bread and butter, at least for now, offensively in this league. But they're still giving him steady minutes night in, night out. And these were 2 games here where you didn't have your full complement of front court players. So you tried some double big combinations in the first game. Tonight, you went more with Walsh and a single big. And I feel like the fact that they're mixing and matching, experimenting, trying some things. I know Noah's talked about that on her podcast, the fact that you are willing to lose some games here if necessary to see some people, younger people specifically, see some different combinations and try some stuff. And just like last year, I know they dropped the game in Indiana, but they're largely winning even while resting Horford, even while missing Brown tonight. I mean, have you even mentioned Brown's absence tonight,
We're
Sherrod,
going to
at this
talk
point?
about that next. I wanted you to finish and hopefully find safe ground. If you
I
need
can't
to-
focus while you're. You
Exactly.
didn't even notice.
I'm just like,
Bobby was so
you're-
locked in during that.
I know,
I'll be back.
Yes, Bobby. We'll be waiting. No, but yeah, I mean, that was I wanted to talk to you guys about that too, about just Jaylen Brown and the hip, and just what's Joe saying about that the hip injury.
Yeah. So, we hadn't heard anything about the hip injury previously. I will say, like Jalen said after, I think it was Detroit, I think it was Detroit, where he said, like, I don't have the same burst right now. Like, it's just the ups and downs. You could tell that there was something he didn't want to say. And I think it was the hip injury. And then Gary Washburn talked to him pregame, and he had in his report on the Globe that he had an MRI at training camp, and then he's going to have another MRI now, and that it's something that's been bothering him. And so you never want to hear that. You never want to hear that somebody has a lingering thing, kind of similar to like the Sam Hauser back thing, where it's like, it's maybe nothing, but it's also maybe something that's going to be a substantial storyline here this season. So I don't know which one it is, but certainly they have the depth and the ability to win all of these games. I mean, I think every night they're not gonna ever be at a disadvantage just because Jalen's out. Like, that's just how deep this team is. And so they were totally fine without him tonight, as they were last year. Anytime he or Tatum didn't sit, like they didn't really miss a beat. But obviously long term, you hope that it's, for the hip flexor, you always think like the worst. You think Isaiah Thomas, like that's the first thing I thought when I saw that injury, but obviously probably it's just a strain and something that'll just go away.
Yeah, absolutely. And when he or Tatum is out, that means the other is the sole alpha leading the troops. And just your thoughts on how Tatum handled that. It seemed that Charlotte did what I think you're supposed to do in that situation, and that is give Tatum a little bit more attention than you normally would when his fellow all-star is not around. How do you think Tatum handled just the adjustments that Charlotte made to the Celtics not having Jaylen Brown?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I don't think it made that much of a difference whether or not Jalen was there, in the sense of like he was getting doubled and he was making the right play. And like you said, like Peyton Pritchard ended up being the release valve a lot of times in this game. And so maybe if Pritchard has an off night, we're having a different conversation, because he had 22 points, which you can't take for granted, right? There's like that last year, a 22-point game would have been a huge story for Pritchard. I feel like he's just been scoring more this year than it's been kind of normalized. But at the end of the day, like I think they're both very comfortable being the only one on the floor. And that's why Joe will sometimes stack their minutes or have, one play the full first and another. And it's not an unusual situation. I almost feel like it ends up being in these regular season games where their minutes are more limited, that it feels like maybe half their minutes they're one of, they're the only one of the two out there. But it makes it so that there's somebody else that's going to have an increased opportunity, and whether or not they'll take advantage of it tonight. Pritchard took advantage of it. Luke took advantage of it. I think it was just they kind of went to other guys, and then we'll see. Like when Porzingis is back and when Jalen is back, like those shots go away, and other people have to sacrifice. And so I think it's good for them in the long term when they have opportunities, because it gives guys a chance to be like, okay, I'm taking 18 shots today. Like I'm probably not going to do that when we have a full team.
Right. And I think it's really good that Joe is finding ways to utilize the bench in a smart, sensible way. I don't think it's not a coincidence that this game, even though the Celtics didn't necessarily blow these guys out, you never really felt as though their control of the game was lost. Charlotte made it interesting at moments, but you never really got the sense that, man, this game might get away from them. And then you start looking at the bench, and Joe played 5 guys off the bench, and 4 of the 5 had a positive plus minus when they were on the floor. And the only one that was negative was Tillman, who was like -1, and he didn't really play a lot to begin with.
Yeah.
just the overall development of that second unit, Noah. How do you see that playing out? I mean, are you happy with what you're seeing as far as the development of the backups, the reserves?
Yeah, I think this is a second unit that's not gonna, there's not multiple big scorers on this bench unit. Like, Sam Hauser right now, you can tell he's not fully himself. He's, as far as his minutes goes, he's been questionable / on the injury report for each of these games. On the sideline, just seeing, watching him in person the last 2 games, he has like this hot pack on his lower back. He's constantly stretching, he's moving around. So this is something that's bothering him. And so he's a guy that I think when he's at full health, like he's one of the primary scoring options off that unit. And right now we're seeing maybe like a version of that. And so Pritchard's kind of been carrying that unit from a scoring standpoint, but this is a bench like last year as well. Like their whole story and their whole point is not to put up points. It's not to score as much as possible. It's to just do the same things that the starters were doing and play good defense and bring in energy. And a lot of times they're playing with Tatum, with Brown, usually. So, they kind of just play around those guys. And there's a reason why last year they had, Sam Hauser, Luke Cornett, Peyton Pritchard have 3 of like the best 4 plus minuses in the league. And I think that last year in this year it'll be kind of similar.
Yeah. And obviously, we're talking about just the bench, some of the younger Celtics, but let's flip the script a little bit and talk about one of the OGs, Drew Holiday. It just seems that Drew has been that guy that his numbers don't necessarily reflect his impact. He had 13 points, but damn, he hit some big shots for these guys. Bobby, just curious your take on Drew and just what he, not just tonight, but just in general, has meant to this team this season.
Yeah, I feel like pretty similar to last year. Yeah, we talked about it in the Indiana game and even the first game here. He inserts himself or instills his impact when necessary. And the rest of the other time, I don't know if it's more management or laying back to allow guys to do their things or just simply spacing the floor, which he's able to do too. You almost don't end up noticing him for long stretches until, he hits a big shot or, the game's going the other way. And I think tonight, during that big run in the third quarter, he hit a 3 at the tail end of it. So he often stacks up those plays. I feel like his defense was a little bit more impactful in this game as well. Not to go full John here, but I do think sometimes the quicker guards, the Trey Mans, LaMelo Balls of the world can end up challenging him a little bit. Yeah, and at this stage of his career, you expect it to be a little bit of a drawback there, but his ability to guard bigger guys, his ability to switch, all that stuff, it's almost like you take it for granted. And I've said it a million times. As much as Porzingis got a lot of credit for changing everything last year, I feel like Holiday's the guy you couldn't have made that run without. And I think it's going to be a similar case this year. His availability, his shooting ability, which just continues to sustain at a high level. It's unbelievable how consistent he's been from beyond the arc. And his ability to defend a variety of positions here, which still seems at the highest level. What more can you say about him? It's just
Are you worried about his age, Bobby? Noah, chime in here as well. He's old by NBA standards.
It's not a worry. Yeah, it's not a worry. It's more of an acknowledgement. Well, it's an acknowledgement that he's not going to be at his best every single night. He's probably going to need some nights off. Has he had a night off, Noah?
No, not this season.
Yeah. So that'll come at some point. And, defensively, he's still probably at that all-NBA level. We'll see how it plays out over the full year here. But you're not going to be the best defender in the world forever here. So you want to see how that continues to progress throughout the course of a full season and how you're able to manage a guy like that. Because just like with Al, who obviously has looked like old Al at times early this year, and Al, who's trying to just get through the regular season and have his best in store for the playoffs. I think Drew's in a similar place. Not quite as old as Al, obviously, but he's played a lot of seasons at this point, a lot of playoff runs. And so it's just something to watch as the year goes on here. There's no concern. He's played well so far. But with each passing year, it's like, all right, how much little bit do you lose there? Do you lose anything at all, Noah?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's so speculative, the age stuff, because right now we he was voted by like GMs entering this year as the best perimeter defender in the league, right? So like nobody feels like right now he's lost a step. And so will he? Like he probably will in the next few years. Or he'll be like LeBron and he'll be 39. We're going to be confused at like how this happened. So you just never know. He's, from everything we've heard, everything we know about him, he's a guy that takes good care of himself, takes good care of his body. I do think that his game like will translate well. Like he's strong, just the way that he moves. It's not like he's like a high flyer and that's the main thing that he relies on. And the main thing is that he just knows his role so well right now on this team. And Charles Lee spoke to it. Charles Lee, who is super close to him, he said just the games that he has caught so far this season of the Celtics, Drew has looked really, really comfortable in his role and his responsibilities. And I think we forget, but there was a moment in time last year where like he spoke openly about how he was still kind of figuring out what he was doing out there and what exactly his role was going to be and what his responsibilities were. And so, yeah, I think right now he doesn't have that learning curve anymore. He started the year really kind of knowing that and having all the full confidence that what he did last year worked because he was a critical piece of that championship. And to me, the age thing is more of like we know that this is not this is not a part of a core that's going to be going on for the next 7 years. Like he is 34. Like you have to think about that in the long-term sense. But for right now, I don't think it's really front of mind, personally, at least.
Yeah, I mean, he makes every OG in every industry feel good because he's playing at a really high level and he's making the plays that have to be made when they absolutely need to be made in order to push back any type of confidence the opponent might be having. One guy that it just seems every single night you go through all the guys that are playing really well, and this guy just stays steady in that short list of standouts, and that's Derek White. I mean, are we at a point where we take Derek White for granted? I mean, because you look at his numbers, he's not giving you Tatum and Jalen numbers per se, but he's damn sure giving you better than Drew and some of the other guys in their core. And yet it seems there's been very little buzz about his impact this year, even though for those of us who are watching, it's pretty clear that he's one of their biggest difference makers.
It's been huge, and I know Noah's going to take on it. We do have to squeeze in a reach real quick here because our fearless leader, Nick, I guess, wasn't able to there during the opening segment. So before we get to White, before we get to Tatum, in fact, who spoke to us not long ago here about the Grant situation, which we'll close the show with, I'm sure. Let's tell the people about Prize Picks because Sunday is coming up tomorrow. It's the best time of week to set your lineup over on Prize Picks. And if you're like me, some of your fantasy teams are just falling apart. Full season fantasy teams are just rattled by injuries or you've fallen off. I think I started 1-6 in one of my leagues. So you need a fresh start every week. And that's what Prize Picks does for you. You can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. And what is Prize Picks? You just pick 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, whether it's football, basketball going on now as well, hockey, all of that. You can get that over on Prize Picks, even combine some players from different leagues. And it's the best place to get real money sports action. And they put their members first. And the best part is you're not committed to a full season with this team. You're just playing on one night, one weekend, in this case for football. So if your players go down, they have the injury insurance. You can still have your lineup set for the second half. And if it doesn't go your way, you're on to the next week. You got a new team for the next football week there. So go check out all the great bonuses and everything else going on Prize Picks, including, of course, $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly over on Prize Picks on the app when you play your first $5 lineup. So check it out, download it, use CLNS to let them know we sent you, and get $50 instantly when you play $5. And of course, game time. I mean, this building tonight, Shride, empty. I can't even imagine what the deals were on game time if you were in North Carolina. It started to make me think. We've been on a couple of road trips so far. Tickets are tough at TD Garden. If you can make a cheap flight down to New York, certainly, or Brooklyn's coming up, Milwaukee. I don't know what the price is going to be there as they go sideways. There's a lot of road games coming up. Atlanta on Monday. If you're in Atlanta or can get down there for a cheap flight, it might be more cheap in full than going to TD Garden. But of course, there's some great deals for everything going on at the Garden. If you're in Boston, concerts, events, and all the rest. You got Bruins going on, as well as Patriots. They'll be home again before long. So go over to the Game Time app, check out the views of your seat. That's my favorite feature over there. All kinds of great flash deals, zone deals, as well as all-in pricing that lets you know what you're going to pay ahead of time. So use the code CLNS, get $20 off your first purchase over there. Terms apply. And we'll tell the people real quick as well about Rocket Money. Can head over there. And if you're like anybody right now, you have subscriptions you don't even know about, could stack into the hundreds of dollars. It's tough. And their members save up to $740 a year when they use all the app's features. And what are some of those? The best one, obviously, you have your subscription price. Sometimes when you go to cancel, they'll offer you a lower rate, sometimes by up to 20%. So they can automatically scan your bills, find opportunities to save, and then you can ask them to negotiate for you. They'll deal with customer service even over at Rocket Money. It's a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. See all your subscriptions in one place is very handy that way, and know exactly where your money's going. And for any of you don't want any more of these subscriptions, once you see what you're paying for, once you have it all in front of you and you see like, whoa, that's way more than I thought I was paying every month, they can help you cancel them with just a few taps. That's the best part of using Rocket Money. So go over there, cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/garden. That's rocketmoney.com/garden, rocketmoney.com/garden. All right, we made it through. White. You got a hot take on White? No, I know.
I don't think it's hot. I think he's going to be an all-star this season. I think they're going to get 3 all-stars because they're going to have a really good record, and there's going to be some reward for the way they won the championship last season. And they're going to get 3 all-stars, and it's going to be Jalen, Jason, and Derek, because he's averaging 19 points right now. He's been one of the best defenders in the league on the perimeter. Like, the blocks have been insane. I feel like we need to start like replaying every single one of these blocks, because every single night I feel like I see a block that I haven't seen before. Or
that was a big one night when they were pulling away.
Yeah, he had. I mean, I don't know how much they credit him for tonight, but he had a couple transition stops that just seemed like lost cause, 2 points. He wasn't even the main defender out there, and he finds a way. He just finds a way to make it happen. And so I feel like at a certain point, like we have to start rewarding that. And people really respect him league wide. I think coaches respect him. I think general managers respect him. His value has really been established over the last few seasons. So in my opinion, I think that he will be an all-star this season. Maybe that's a hot take, but I'm going to just start saying it, and maybe other people will listen and start saying it too.
So I've thought about this Sherrod too with the MVP race, and I don't know where Tatum stands at this point. The way the first couple of weeks went, I guess, do show why it's a little silly to run away with that and make some bold proclamations off 7 games here. So who knows where things are going to stand here by the All-Star break in terms of who will make the team. Jalen's hurt now. We'll get to that before the end too. Paolo's hurt. I mean, everybody's hurt across the league right now, and that obviously opens up opportunities for a guy like White. If an injury happens right before the All-Star game even, he could fill in as an injury replacement. And I think that's probably the most likely way that it would happen, Noah, because without going in all the logistics and ways that they decide this team, you're thinking in terms of guards. Mitchell, Garland's off to a great start right now. You're always going to have Trae Young in that mix. I'm trying to think of some other big names in the East. You got your Jalen Brunson. He's going to be in there. You got, Scotty Barnes is hurt now. So, there's some injuries creeping in here. And certainly the East isn't the strongest conference right now. So I'm not ruling out Maxi's another one. He'll be in that mix. So, that's 5-6 right there that White has to contend with. And when we're talking about stars, no, I still think that dominates a lot of the conversation here. I'm not ruling it out. You still
the subs don't have to be. The subs are positionless, though, right? The injury subs.
I believe so. Yeah.
That's how he's going to get in. It's going to be a positionless injury sub.
If he gets in outright, either a ton of people got hurt, the Celtics are 100 games ahead of everybody around the time voting's going on, or he's playing out of this world. And he is playing out of this world right now, Sherrod.
He is, and I think he will get in. I think he'll get in. Based upon what Noah was saying earlier, I just think their record is going to warrant 3 guys, and I think that there are going to be some judgment call, close call type players that coaches are going to have to, it's going to be difficult to make that decision. But ultimately, most coaches that I've talked to about All-Star voting say ultimately they want the guys that do the best job of winning games and got numbers to back it up. And if Derek White is giving you 17, 18 points a game, shooting around 50% from the field, high 30s, possibly low 40s from 3-point range, and defending the way he does, it's easy for a coach to pick him over, let's say, Mikal Bridges or, the second, guard for Cleveland. Because again, if they have a really gaudy record and he's putting up solid numbers and he's making a clear and undeniable impact, that's what you need to get a third guy on the team. That's going to be voted in by the coaches. So I think he's got a better than average chance of getting in, because I think ultimately the things that he does well and the things that the Celtics do well are going to be rewarded. And Noah, you kind of alluded to it, but this happens all the time. Usually guys are rewarded the year after they probably should have gotten their just rewards. There's a lot of folks who would look at that Celtics team a little bit differently if they could go back in time, and look at Jaylen Brown maybe a little bit differently if they go back in time, and Derek White as well. And they'll get a chance to make amends for that, so to speak, this year. And I do think Derek White, if he continues to play the way he does and they continue to win at a relatively high clip, I think he'll get in. I think he'll be voted in by the coaches.
So we do have some sound from Jason Tatum coming. He reacted tonight after, I guess, some convincing, because he didn't want to talk about it, Sherrod. You could tell. Didn't want to get into the whole Grant thing here. The Grant thing had some moments tonight, weird moments, booing from the crowd, certainly. It was an atmosphere that was anticipating something maybe happening there. But nothing ever really did. They lined up one-on-one a few times. Some guys crashed into each other. Tatum looked pretty locked in, and I don't know if angry is the right word, but pissed off. I don't know. There was definitely a different tenor to his game, or just his approach tonight. Left the court pretty quickly after the game. Didn't really meet or greet with anyone too long. And then, Noah, you were in there. I got there a little late. I guess he didn't want to talk initially, and then decided to take a couple of questions about the situation here, and we'll get you that shortly. But what did you make of his night and his post game here?
Yeah, I mean, he was brief, but and I don't like him. I think he's always happy to talk when he plays poorly, when they have bad losses. This honestly, the more time has passed here, I do think that this annoyed him a lot, the situation. And this is just a reminder, we don't really know what these guys' relationships are like behind the scenes, who's super close with who, how often they communicate and things. There was something going on tonight between a lot of members of the Celtics and Grant. There was little moments with Luke, little moments with Derek. I was trying to film when the game ended, kind of where everybody was, and there was so much happening with Tatum skirted. Grant was trying to say hi to people, but nobody really was trying to.
Yeah, so Grant got rejected and then made a pretty quick beeline out of there, right?
It was tough. So
we don't want to talk to you today, Grant. Sorry.
Cornet gave him a handshake.
It was a weird situation, and I wonder, I don't know. I think the play is one thing, but it seems like he had a weird reaction to it. The post games stuff was weird. I mean, I didn't talk to him directly, but just from the videos that I saw, and so I wonder if this is going to become a thing now that he comes to Boston, and people are already kind of a little on the fence about him. I think, but it certainly didn't help his situation. It did feel like a heavy storyline here especially towards the end of the game. It was kind of building up, and then by the fourth, it was I felt like there was always something going on with Grant and something little, but there.
Yeah. Just watching the game, last night's game and tonight's game, here's what I think happened. I think if you're the Celtics, Tatum and those guys, this was someone that you thought of as your brother. And your brother crossed the line that he didn't have to. And you're trying to process how this happened. How did we get here? And I don't think Grant did anything to smooth it out. If let's say you have a breakup and it's not a good one, then you anticipate that it's something like this might happen. But I think everyone on the Celtics side thought that they were good. And what Grant did last night was not good. And it's raising, I think, a lot of questions about Grant. I mean, let's just rewind for a second and just marinate on this idea. How many players leave a team that drafted them, sign with another team, get traded from that second team, and those two teams wind up playing for the NBA championship? You were literally part of the two teams that are playing for a championship, and both in some way, shape, or form made it clear that they didn't want you around.
So
That's
interesting,
unusual.
Sherrod, because I don't know if you saw it, but late last night, Draymond Green sends out a couple of tweets on the situation, and we know how Draymond feels about Grant.
We do.
Unbelievable still, even considering Draymond's past transgressions on the court. Draymond said, Grant Williams saying it's not intentional fouling JT like that is mad wild, and he's smiling about it. Thinking a blindside.
Draymond knows about Mad Wild, so
this one was great. I mean, they got better and better. There was 3 of them. Thinking a blindside hit on your mans is a smile-worthy offense means one of 2 things. You have 0 awareness or you are goofy, and both make you a goofy. And then finally, he mad at JT.
I never want to hear you reading a Draymond Green tweet again.
Never, Bobby.
Finally, he mad at JT about something, LOL, and then a ring emoji and a emoji. He was supposed to keep him in Boston, LOL. JT got a ring, and dude let his frustrations out about it.
Yeah, I mean, I do think there's some of that. I do, because Grant didn't want to leave, but there's just they did not want him to be in Boston, and goes to Dallas. They did not want him in Dallas, and I'm still struggling to understand what the hell Grant was thinking last night, though. I mean, I know he says it wasn't. What's that?
Does Draymond know something, or is he just spouting off late night?
I think he's just spouting off. Although now Draymond and Tatum are cool with each other now. I mean, you see, whenever Draymond is around, Deuce is cool with him, and if Deuce is cool with him, you know Deuce's daddy is cool with him. So maybe he does. But again, it's just hard to understand what Grant was thinking last night. And it's really telling, Bobby, and me and Nick talked about this earlier, even with a lot of Celtics fans in the stands in Charlotte, okay, you anticipate that there'd be some booing. But to me, more telling was the lack of support from the few Charlotte fans that were there for Grant. I mean, it was like Celtics Nation, in the arena was booing the hell out of him, and Charlotte fans were like in the concourse getting some nachos. Or those who were sitting there were just sitting there eating their nachos and their popcorn. There was very little pushback on that, and that's surprising. That's very surprising to me, because no matter how you feel about Grant, if you're a Hornets fan, he's one of yours. He's part of your family, and with him being from Charlotte, you would think it would be even more of a pushback of sorts. But there was nothing. No, you about to say something? I'm sorry.
No, my bad. The only thing is there really weren't like a lot of Hornet fans here. Like it genuinely, for most of the game, I thought there were none. And then when they went on a little run in the third, I was like, okay, there's like a little group here. But it really, I don't know that it would have mattered if the fan base was behind him, because the building was really green. Like it really, walking around the concourse, it was kind of ridiculous. It was like every single person was a Celtics fan. I was talking to people that came here for the weekend who were trying to save money and were like, this is the best way to see two games. So just for context, like, I don't know that there were fans to support him, but yeah, it was the weird dynamic. I mean, he did a little voting PSA pregame and everybody's booing. And I think they were booing not the PSA, but him, but I don't even know. So yeah.
That was unbelievable.
When he grabbed the mic, we were like, what is he about to say? And then
we thought, Sherrod, they said now a few words from Grant Williams before the game.
He's going to apologize to Tatum.
We thought
he was about to grab the mic at midcourt and apologize to Tatum.
I wish he would. That would have been awesome. That would have been awesome. But he would have got booed for that too, though. He would absolutely.
It'll be a story moving forward. I'm sure next time they'll play. Next time they're in Boston, it's going to be a thing now. it's always like when there's a former player, we always have like the niece is Neesmith seeking revenge. Like I feel like it's always like that anyways, but now there's obviously something a little bit more concrete there.
Yeah.
I will say yesterday morning when we spoke to him, it was lovely. It was like 12 minutes of insight, reflection. He was so happy for the guys. So it's weird how quickly the feeling has changed because
That's what
I walked away being like, this guy could not be happier for these guys for winning the championship.
That's what still confuses me a little bit, Sherrod, here is you've talked to Grant a million times. You've covered this team. That Grant off the court, who's so insightful and just so friendly and just seems to be this great personality, transforms on the court. And all of a sudden it's, wagging the finger like crazy for replay, screaming at teammates or just smashing into guys like we saw over the last 2 games here. So I don't know if it's just the competition or the intensity of the game or what it is, but something just seems to go haywire in his head on the floor a lot of the times. And I think I have Tatum queued up here, his reaction to it. So we're going to play this in full. This was his post-game comments. Pretty short, pretty brief. Didn't say a ton about it here, but this was Tatum speaking about the incident for the first time.
Physically hard, healthy, fun, and the shot isn't going down, not yours, but just the team's. In the second half, it seemed like you guys had to find a different way to win after a 16-point first half. How were you guys able to kind of adjust in mid-game when kind of a grinded out game?
I mean, you guys watch enough basketball. We play enough basketball. Every game isn't the same. There's 82 of them. You're not always going to shoot exactly how you want. But the objective of the game is to find a way to win. We had a couple 25-point quarters on the defensive end, trying to limit teams to 25 points or under a quarter. So finding ways to win when the shot's not necessarily falling for all of us, and we got to get stops.
We didn't get a chance to talk to you last night. The situation that happened with Grant, he said he's one of your close friends, that you wouldn't take it.
Damn, I hate to see if you was an enemy.
What
Damn.
was your reaction to going through that with somebody who spent many years with, and just what was your takeaway from that?
I mean, I don't really want to talk about it. Just got ready for the game today. We came to Charlotte, did what we were supposed to do, and we're going to Atlanta, try to get another win before we go home.
When something like that does happen, is part of you like, I want to score 40 the next time I play this guy, circle it on the calendar? Obviously, this was a unique situation when we come back the next night. How do you want to respond to that in such a situation?
No, I don't ever make it about one person. I understand who I am in this league, and I come out and play the right way. It's not about a matchup or anything. So just come out and try to dominate, give my team the best chance to win, and playing the right way, whether that's scoring, rebounding, screening for other guys. The objective is to make sure we give us the best chance to win. So it's not about situation, no other person.
Okay.
And that was the gist of it. Gary asked him about guys playing more physical and stuff, and he talked more about the game here than anything specific to Grant here. So he steered clear of it, obviously. As we mentioned, he didn't want to talk last night. Understandably, maybe frustrated, maybe annoyed. I know Gary reported, I don't know if you said this earlier, that they talked on the phone and Grant apologized, and Tatum, while annoyed, accepted the apology. So yeah, he was pissed. You're right.
And I can't blame him though, because I'm pretty sure like the vibes that Grant gave you guys when he talked to you that morning were kind of the vibes that he gave Tatum before they started playing. And then all of a sudden where, the Celtics, have the game, relatively in hand, and he comes down, and that was a cheap shot. There's no other way you can describe what he did. It was a cheap ass shot. And you would expect that. Well, it wouldn't surprise you if, a young player who's trying to figure his way out through the league does something like that. But this wasn't just another young player. This was a guy that you went to battle with, for years. Someone that you, by all accounts, considered a friend. And for him to do something like that, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, what was there for Grant to gain by doing that? That's the thing that I have struggled with, trying to kind of put this thing in perspective. It wasn't what, you're trying to rattle Tatum? I mean, you're trying to get in his head. You should know him well enough to know that that's not going to do it. It's just not going to do
I
it.
still think looking back on it, it wasn't trying to send a message. It wasn't trying to hard foul him or anything like that. I think it was in a desperation moment, a ball going the other way, game getting away from them a little bit, game not going Grant's way. He tried to do something aggressive in that moment, and it went completely haywire, and he ended up making a ridiculous, dumb play.
He looked like an ass for doing that. I mean, if we're being honest and candid, and Grant is a really good guy. For those of us who've had a chance to talk to him, get to know him a little bit, there's a lot to like about him. But in that moment, he looked like an ass for doing that.
What do you think it was looking back on it, Noah? You've watched it a million times.
I have no idea. I feel like the more time passes, the less I understand really what happened. And again, I don't think his intention was to hurt him. That's just crazy. I mean, it's crazy to think about. But why would you want to hurt your friend? But it was a dumb play. And then I think the aftermath is maybe it was more annoying, like the post game stuff, the grin. Like, I know people just didn't like the optics of that. So, long story short, though, I think my big takeaway from this was Tatum was annoyed by it, maybe more than I initially anticipated, just based off the fact he really didn't want to talk about it at all. But also, Tatum is just so good at the stuff that he just knows exactly.
We knew. We talked about it. We talked about it yesterday, Noah, that he was going to come back with the most polished, prepared way to approach the situation, and it ended up just being not talking about it.
And I honestly think this is the stuff that makes him less popular league wide. Is like people love like the Anthony Edwards soundbite that would have come out of this game. You know what I mean? If this is like an Anthony Edwards
one from yesterday.
Yeah, the Jalen. Like it's fun, it's cool, all this stuff. But yeah, with Tatum, he just I don't think he wants to be in this story. Like I don't think he wants any part of the story. And he's not going to be in the story as much because he literally said nothing post game. So kudos to him for being really good at this, honestly.
Maybe part of that, Sherrod, too, is that they feel like they squashed it privately. And that's what Tatum maybe wanted to do yesterday before saying something heinous about Grant in the media before even being able to talk to him. Because obviously they weren't able to talk on the court there or briefly after the game in the time that we talked to Grant there. So I think that's a big part of how he handled it, too, is if they are friends, if they are cool, you want to handle it on the side rather than in front of the microphone there, which I understand. Only other thing I got on this is that quote from Jalen yesterday, all-timer. I thought Tatum and Grant were friends. I guess not.
Classic. And to Jalen's point, I mean, when I think about people that I consider friends that I compete with, would I do that to them? Probably not. There's probably, if I do, then there's probably something going on that's between me and them that no one else knows about, or I've suppressed and I'm releasing it in that moment. It just was so out of character for Grant to do that to anyone, let alone to a teammate, that a former teammate. And again, as we look at this 48 hour, 24 hours later, it makes even I'm with you, Noah. I don't know what the hell he was thinking. I don't know what to make of this. But I do know that this was something that bothered Tatum in the moment. And the fact that he wants very little, if anything, to say about it. I'm not sold that he's completely put this behind him. I think it's one of those things where he's not going to focus on it, but make no mistake about it. Then the next time that you see the Celtics getting ready to play the Charlotte Hornets, he's not going to think about the 32 points or the 29 points or the fact that every single shot that was a non-3-pointer went in for him in this second game. He's going to think about that hit from Grant. And it's going to bother him. And it's going to irk him. Now, will it impact his play? We don't know that. But obviously, with Tatum, he's so good. I mean, it could have no impact on him, and he could drop 40. He could be obsessing over it, and he could still drop 40. You just never really know. But I can't. And I wish I knew why Grant did it. Like, it's done. It's over with. We got to move on. I get that. But damn, you would like to have some closure to it as to knowing what precipitated him doing that.
Well, Noah and I were going to discuss the Jalen situation coming up, but while we have you here, Sherrod, Looks like he's going to get a second MRI, according to Gary. Already had one on a hip flexor strain here and had been dealing with it for multiple games, Joe Mazzulla said before the game. Explains maybe the 1-21 3-point shooting stretch he's on here and some uneven play over the last handful of games here. And looked like he aggravated a handful of times in that last game. Maybe there was a plan to manage it here because Horford was playing the front end and Brown ends up sitting the second half here. So we'll see how much time he misses. I'd have to imagine if he aggravated in the first game and that's how this went, and now he's going to go get another MRI after checking out initially, he could miss some time here. I'm not going to speculate on how long, but I think they'll obviously be cautious with this here in the regular season. And it's too bad. He's missed time here, there, hamstrings, this and that. So he usually doesn't miss too much time when he's hurt. But I could definitely see him at the very least being out Monday.
I would hope that they are extremely cautious with bringing him back because he means so much to this team and their goals. And their goal at the end of the day is win a championship. And you know, we talked a little bit about this earlier. You know, guys like Jordan Walsh, guys like Sam Hauser. Boy, man, Lonnie Walker sure would be a nice little something to throw in there right about now, huh? That's another conversation for another episode. But the Celtics have some options if he's not able to go in the next game or a few games.
Luke.
Yeah, I want Luke as my starting small forward.
No, slide Al over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke hour early. We are not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke replacing Jaylen Brown on a temporary basis. No, not happening. But there's the potential where we can see a little more Jordan Walsh. And, you know, give Joe Mazzulla credit for getting Jordan Walsh out there now so that if there's a chance where he may have even more of an increased role, it won't be this completely like, you know, fish out of water moment for him. He'll actually have some type of muscle memory that he's developing on what he needs to do to help this team win and be impactful. So Joe Mazzulla and just the development of the young guys, it may very well be one of those things that we see pay off in the next week or so. If Jaylen Brown is not able to go and then all of a sudden you're seeing a little bit more of a Jordan Walsh or, you know, Peyton Pritchard might have a more prominent role offensively. The Celtics have some options if Jaylen Brown is not able to go. And that's one of the many reasons why so many of us think this team is going to repeat because they're deep and they have shown the ability to withstand, you know, a key player in their rotation not being around for a short period of time.
You got anything there, Noah? Or we'll obviously talk about it in a moment here, but
No, just I think the only other thing I would say is just the reality is that, you know, there's Jordan Walsh, but the continuity from last season, you know, we were talking about like, is anybody gonna get an opportunity this season? Because there's the exact same group coming back. Like you almost needed there to be injuries for guys to have a chance. But the reality is it's an NBA season, like there's gonna be injuries. And even a guy like Drew Peterson, who's in Maine right now, like this is his second season with Boston. You know, he looked really good in preseason. Like maybe he comes down and gets a chance. Like, I don't know. But if there's something more extended here with some of these guys, like it's not like they don't have people to draw from. Like there's a very robust player development process that I think the team really buys into and really prides themselves in. And it's in moments where Jaylen Brown has a strained hip flexor where that comes into effect. And a lot of times it's kind of just dormant, waiting to take place, waiting to showcase the fact that there's guys that have gotten a lot better. So right now, Nimi's getting that chance because Porzingis is out, but there's going to be other opportunities for guys. And I'm just excited to see what happens. And hopefully the Jaylen Brown thing is not something that's a long-term concern, because if it is long-term, then none of that matters because they need him for the playoffs.
A lot of bumps and bruises, a lot of stretching before this game treatment. Hauser still banged up playing through it. Brown taking a seat here and assessing what this injury is going to bring. We'll have more coverage down in Atlanta. I guess just me. I'm heading down there. Noah, going to head back to Boston for the Warriors game on Wednesday, which talk about more drama. We're going to have another Tatum story that day, which woohoo. Ashrod Blakely, thanks for holding it down with Nick Gelso to start the show here. Again, thanks for Noah down here in Atlanta covering it all with CLNS Media, SB Nation. I got a Jordan Walsh piece out over on Celtics blog, as you mentioned earlier. I got something coming with Kemba Walker, Shrod. I just caught up with him down here starting what he said probably isn't going to be a coaching career, but something to do for now, something to, you know, step foot into retirement. So
yeah, because he's not leaving Charlotte. That's it. He's not leaving the city of Charlotte. So
yeah, great seeing him around.
Mhm.
Infectious smile, amazing guy. So appreciate him giving me some time down here to catch up with him. And check out that CLNS Media's Celtics All Access YouTube channels here. And we'll be back on Monday night. I saw a 7:45 tip-off. I guess that's
Weird.
what they're doing down there in Atlanta. So I'll see you guys down there, have all the updates, and we'll see you after the game here on the Celtics postgame show. Good night, everyone.
Wait, Amit's got an outro for us, I think.
No, he doesn't.
He said he was going to work on an outro.
He had a phenomenal game.
Phenomenal.
Horford's out. I think it's an auction. That did not sound like a chair.
It was a freaking chair. It does sound like a chair.